Okay, meanwhile, comrades, feel most welcome. And this is, of course, our usual consensus study group. This is our Saturday where we discuss the unification of Africa. And we look at various topics and various issues. We have various speakers sometimes who then help us or guide us sometimes in the discussion or do a presentation for us in regards to various topics that are related to the unification of Africa. This is actually the second class of consciousness study group where we are looking at how can Africa unite, because our goal is the total unification of Africa into one continental government. Of course, part of our Pan-African goal is the total liberation of Africa, the total unification of Africa, and the total development of Africa. So we are gathered here today, comrades, to look at this topic that is actually part of strategies that the African Union has put into place, which is called actually the Science, Technology, and Innovation Strategy for Africa. I know most of us have never heard of it. Now imagine some who are not even progressive Pan-Africans, how many of them have heard of this strategy? This strategy was actually launched in 2024, and is a framework that is meant to drive the socio-economic transformation of Africa. But again, we want to ask whether does it truly serve the aspirations of Africans, or is just in a cog in the wheels of the neo-colonial dependency. So today we are going to discuss the liberation through the innovation. So can Stisa, which is a strategic plan, actually empower Africa to break free from technological dependence of the global north or does it reinforce external control over our innovation as Africans? We are also going to look at the unification in this level, unification and integration. So how effectively is this strategy called Stisa can actually align the African continental free trade area to foster cross-border collaboration in science and technology? Is it actually a tool that can help us unify the continent, the 57 nations, into one continental government? Then you're also going to check development for whom. Does this TISA actually strategy prioritize grassroots needs such as affordable healthcare, sustainable agriculture, and clean energy, or does it only cater for the interests of the elites and the foreign investors in Africa? We are also going to look at the cultural and ideological sovereignty. Now, are Africans' indigenous knowledge systems and philosophy integrated in this TISA, or does it only mimic the Western models of progress? And how can we ensure that science and technology reflect true African values? How about youth and gender inclusion? So with the population that is very high, does this TISA provide a concrete pathway for young innovators and women in STEM to lead the continent transformation? How about the sovereignty or resource sovereignty? Can Stisa prevent the plunder of African critical minerals, e.g. the cobalt and lithium, and which is used in the tech industry, ensuring that they benefit African economy, because science and technology? How about the education and capacity building? Does the strategy actually address the urgent need to reform education systems to produce homegrown scientists, engineers, and critical thinkers for self-reliance in Africa? And lastly, last but not least, actually, the global power dynamics. So in this era of global or geopolitical rivalry, how can this strategic plan position Africa as a leader in the emerging technology? Of course, issues like AI, the biotechs, and even renewable energy, rather than being a consumer or a testing ground for their technology in the continent. Why have the past AU strategy faltered in the execution? Because this is another strategy of AU. Remember, AU said that we silenced the guns by 2020. Up to date, there are still guns in Sudan, Congo, and the rest. Now we are looking at the implementation. Why has the AU previous plans failed? And what mechanism must be put in place to ensure that this TISA, this is the strategy they are having, actually give us or delivers measurable outcome for ordinary citizens? How can we now who are here as Pan-Africanists reimagine this scientific and technological strategy to align with Nkrumah's vision for scientifically advanced, socialist and united Africa? So comrades, this is what we intend to look at today. I had actually sent a document of this copy to some of you, but we'll look at a review a bit to those who maybe have not looked at it. So once again, feel most welcome, Sawindok. We are having, of course, Sister Chisomo, Jeronunaki, Sister Aida, and Sister Shaza. I will be going straight a bit just to give an overview of this strategic document, which I've shared with you, and we're going to look at it in that category. So this strategic plan, as I've said, it was actually a launch in 2014. This is the document. It's around 50-page document. But if you look at it just critically a bit, you see is actually, so there's the acknowledgement part, which is on the wings of innovation, science and technology. They say that this plan was realized through the valuable contribution of many individuals. So how did they come up with this plan? So it was a consultation of many individuals and organizations that invested both their time and resources in the process. So the AU Commission would therefore like to extend their gratitude to those members who participated. Of course, the adoption of this strategy was already adopted. All processes that led to its adoption by the head of states and government took place in 2014. Special mentions goes to high level to, of course, those panel of eminent Africans and diaspora scientists that was co-chaired by Professor Colestus Juma of Harvard Kennedy School and Professor Ismail, director of Bethlehem Alexandrina University. The panel was, of course, presided over by consolidated plan of actions and subsequent development of this. So this was worked through, of course, technical working groups, and which drew experts from regional institutions, namely the NEPAD was there, the African Academy of Sciences, African Development Bank, International Council for Science Regional Office of Africa, the UN Economic Commission for Africa, the United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organizations. So all these were members that participated in the process. And it's very important that they have actually quoted Nkrumah in this strategic plan as they start, and they're saying that they give the quote from Nkrumah, which is that we shall accumulate machinery and establish steelwork, iron foundries and factories. We shall link the various states of our continent with communications. We shall astound the world with our hydroelectric power. We shall drain marshes and swamps, clear infested areas, feed the undernourished, and rid our people of parasites and diseases. It is within the possibility of science and technology to make even the Saharan bloom into a vast field with verdant vegetations for agricultural and industrial development. This is the vision of Nkrumah so many years ago. So these were part of the foundation that inspired the document to be in press. So the document has so many things, of course, the historical background, the CPA reviews, situational analysis, rationalities, strategic orientation, priority areas. I'm a strategist, by the way, just to let you know. I do so many strategies for various organizations. So all these things, including strategic objective, development of flagship programs. I'll be very interested to look at the flagship programs and what is their priority areas in this chapter 2 alone. Of course, the governance and the implementation is not important, but we'll also look at the implementation mechanism that they have in place, their funding mechanism, communication and publicity, the pillars they have, and the monitoring and evaluation framework. So this is the whole strategy that the African Union is having. Now, those other things are not very important in terms of the acronym and the rest. The forward is not very important for this particular moment. But what we are interested in is just to look straight at actually the priority areas. But what is the vision of Africa Union and mission on this strategic plan? Now, the African Union is committed to achieve its vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa. An Africa driven and managed by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the international arena. Now, that's what it is. But the mission of Stisa is to accelerate Africa transition to an innovation-led, knowledge-based economy. And how do they want to achieve this? They are saying they will achieve this by improving STI readiness in Africa in terms of infrastructure, professional and technical competence. They're trying to do this by implementing specific policies and programs. So this is all they're having in place on how to ensure that we have this working. Just to be very brief a bit, I'll be looking, not even in the introduction, but that introduction is very important for us for our discussion. I'll be taking maybe a minimum of 15 minutes to just give you an overview. I know some of you might have not have the time to look at this document. Some are meeting this document for the first time. So historical background is very important, that the African countries made a bold attempt to turn around their development fortunes by adapting the Monrovia strategy in July 1979 and the Lagos Plan of Action (LPA) for the economic development of Africa between 1980 to 2000, and the final act of Lagos still in 1980s. So the LPA was a visionary far-reach and unprecedented blueprint on how to foster collective self-reliance and sustainable development of the continent, and the subsequent attempts that charting African development have drawn inspiration from visionary works. So among the conferences that followed from, actually the Lagos included, of course, of action. They were organized by UNESCO and other bodies that did that as well. So then the Constitutive Act of the AU made provisions for the following organs and continental institutions in accordance with the stipulation of the Abuja Treaty and the SATA Declaration on the creation of AU. So the Assembly of the Union, the Executive, and those other panels that are there. Now, there was actually a key overview that's very interesting here for us to look at, which is the consolidation of all the plan of action led us to actually now have what we call this science, technology, and innovation strategy for Africa. Now, if you look at the situational analysis, that's very not important, but it's very important to look at what is the situation. If you're doing strategy, you look at the situation, you analyze the situation in the continent. So one thing they came up with is one, that there's an increased recognition by African leadership and the public of the critical roles of science, technology, and innovation, and how it plays in economic growth and human development. That's the first recognition out of their analysis. The second one, there was insufficient funding for actually science, technology, and innovation across the continent. And the third one is the organizational capacity by entities responsible for science, technology, and policy. They are not having enough capacity to execute what they had. And if you look at another situational analysis, the infrastructure to support the innovation. So most of African countries do not have the infrastructure that can then support the innovation in the African continent. Then if you look at other things, is inadequate expertise on science, technology, innovation, policy development. So we have very few expertise in. There's also, if you look at it, the issue with bilateral and multilateral cooperation, the scientific outputs, and there's also emergence of African Civil Aviation Organization and the think tanks dedicated to raise awareness. So all these were the situational analysis that they came up with. Then now, after situational analysis, of course, you go to rationale on the Africa Union Agenda 2063. That's the rationale now where we come in. And that's the pathing. So this is the timing of the STS strategy within the Agenda 2063. So then the strategy came in between 2014 to 2024. And it will lead to actually 2063. So what are the priority areas that these people are focusing on? So if you look at these priority areas, you look at the various priority areas. With first priority area is that they are looking at eradicating hunger and achieving food security. Of course, we remember last time we looked at the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program. So how do you use then technology to elevate poverty and spur social and economic transformation of the continent? The African Union pays special attention to the development of rural economy and agriculture, of course, through those strategies they have. So this is the first priority area, eradication of hunger and achieving food security. The next priority area is prevention and control of diseases using technology or innovation or science. The third priority area is communications, because with innovation, technology, and science, Africans can be able to have a way to do proper communication, both for physical and intellectual mobility. And the next priority area they are focusing on is actually on protection of our space. So our biospace, our whole space in terms of the African natural resources, how do we protect them? Then we are also looking at another strategy, which is priorities. How do we live together and build a society? How do we then create wealth? So these are the priority areas that the strategy is trying to work on. If you bring them down, is how these are you come out with the strategy. The first priority is how do we use these to eradicate hunger and ensure food and nutritional security. Now, if you look at that area, what they are looking at is we are looking at agriculture. So if you have to attain food security, how do you use technology in this? So things to do with what we call agronomy in terms of cultivation, techniques, seed, soil, and climate issues. They are also looking at industrial chains in terms of conservation and transformation and distribution of infrastructures and techniques. So this is where the innovation thing come in. Then the second priority of the strategic plan is to prevent and control disease and ensure well-being of the people. So how do we do that? By better understanding the endemic diseases, how you come up with maternal child health and traditional medicine as well. So how do you incorporate them? On the communication, what you look at is the physical communication. So intellectual communication in terms of ICT. These are priority areas to protect our space. Issues to do with the atmospheric physics, biodiversity, space technology, maritime, submarine explorations. If you look at issues to do with how do we live together, they're looking at citizenship, history and shared value, Pan-Africanism, regional integration, governance, democracy, city management, mobility, urban hydrology and hydraulics, urban waste management. On creating the wealth, they're looking at education and human resource development, exploitation of our and management of our mineral resources, all those things. Then from those priority areas, they have their what you call the strategic objective. So the strategic objective of this science, technology, innovation for Africa strategic plan by AU, one is to enhance effectiveness of science, technology, and innovation in addressing and implementing priority areas. The second thing is to improve technical competencies and institutional capacities for science, technology, and innovation development. The third one is to promote economic competitiveness through fostering innovation, value addition, industrial development, and entrepreneurship in synergy with instruments such as Action Plan for Accelerated Industrial Development of Africa, which is called AIDA, the Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Plan for Africa, which is PMPA. The other strategic objective is to protect knowledge production. So how do we protect knowledge production, including inventions, indigenous knowledge, by strengthening what we call the intellectual property rights and regulatory regimes. And last priority area is how do you facilitate science, technology, and innovation policy reforms, harmonizations of those policies, science diplomacy, and resource mobilizations. So they have what we call the flagship programs that are very important for Stisa, and most of the priority areas for their flagship program, you realize that we have this one. As you have said, so one of the key domains is water availability, water quality in controlling of disease, in communication, how do you lead to that? So all these are what you call priority areas, as you have listed, 6 of them: anger, diseases, communication, protection of our space, unity or living together, and creation of wealth for Africans. So out of that, you come up to the flagship programs, which include actually issues to do with political stability. Is very important for you to have this. Now, for you to attain this other level of water and resources, you need to have things like scientists, economic operations, private sectors. You need to bring them together, civil society, funding agencies. Then you lead to the research that then gives you all those programs. So the regs and the country's public and private research structures, all these are part of this. So you go to phase 1 of this strategy. So the phase 1 of this strategy was the institutional setting. And at this phase one from 2014, the African Union was to actually focus on issues to do with institutional setting. So this included informing the establishment and resourcing of required institutional at national, regional, and continental level. That was the phase one. Then phase two is actually that was ran between 2015 to 2017, which included development and implementation of the first set of flagship programs. So 3-year flagship program will be elaborated, adapted, implemented, building and on concluded or current successful programs. That was the phase two. Then the phase three was to be between 2018 to 2020, which based on the lesson learned between the evaluation phases of phase two, now you set up second flagship programs. Then phase three was between 2021 2023, which also based on the lesson learned in phase three, you build up to another phase four. Then now phase five, which was to end in ended in 2024, was the final evaluation of the strategy, lesson plan, impact, date, combined with 360 review of all the things that were put in place, including the milestone for the next 10 years strategic plan. So these are the phases on how everything else was to be run. And if you go back a bit down, you get now to the pillars of this strategy. I'm just trying to run very fast to this document. I know I'd shared it, but as somebody who has worked on strategies a bit, I'll be able to move very fast so that you can be able to have some time to discuss it. So the first part is the infrastructural development as the first pillar. The second pillar is technical competencies. And the third pillar is about innovation and entrepreneurship. The fourth pillar is about enabling environment. How do you create an enabling environment? Then you go to those are the four strategic pillars. So if you look at those four strategic pillars, they're very important for you to note them. That the first strategic pillar, let me just go back a bit so that you can know these strategic pillars. So if you're going to achieve science and technology, the first thing you need to work on is the infrastructural development. So these include research and innovation facilities such as laboratories, such as teaching hospitals, ICT equipment, infrastructures, innovation spaces, living labs, national research education centers. All those are things that you're looking at infrastructural level, you see. Then you look at the technical level. So here you are going to look at things to do with the researchers, the innovators. How do you empower that among the member states? So the member state must take a systematic and coordinated approach to human capital development and actually popularizing STA, which is the Science, Technology and Innovation Research and Innovation Center. So including having levels or having institutions like TVETs or technical vocational centers. Those are very important for you to create technical competencies. Then if you have to look at the innovation and entrepreneurship, so you come up with those innovation hubs, you see. Open up innovation and entrepreneurship is very essential for this. So you need to look at those innovation hubs, either the both research, private and public sectors. All those need to be put in place. So if you have those, you'll actually resort to what you call entrepreneurial innovation that now will be based on data. Then you look at the enabling environment. So how do you work on enabling? You create the creation of such an environment involve member states, the regs, and the AU having evidence-based policy and programs for STA. So each member state requires a coherent national framework for action and direction. So those are the key four areas for that. Then of course the implementation and the governance, which is almost the second last chapter of this. So these are how the implementation and decision is made. So the decision-making process then takes place from the Assembly of Head of States and Governments, which has, of course, the Executive Council. Then you have the Council of Coordination of Flagship Program, you have the STCs on education, then the African Union Commission. So this is the decision part. Then decision for implementation, then move to the implementation phase. So in the implementation phase, you need things like NEPAD, Planning Coordination Agencies, Africa Development Bank. You'll have to have private sectors in place, regional economic communities. Those are what we call RECs, regional economic communities. Individual countries have to come in for implementations. You have to have specialized institutions and agencies. So all these form the institutional implementation phase, and that goes back to the reporting. So once you do the implementation, you come back to the reporting phase down here. So you report back to the decision-making body. So that's how the structure is made. So the decisions come from the head of states. Then the implementation stage is taken by stakeholders, then the stakeholders report back to the head of states. So that's basically the structure in summary. So instead of what is written down here, that's the structure that I've just decided to share there up there in summary of how the decisions are made in this strategic plan. So then basically that's what we are looking at today. So if you look at the structure, that's how it is. So at institutional levels, you find that the institution, we have the assembly, we have the executive council, we have the ministerial sector or the ministerial conference, the African Union councils. So the priority areas here is to adapt. What you adapt, then you go to flagship programs that like harmonization, consolidation. That's how they move to the regional level. So these just documents that are necessary for strategic plans. And I think I've tried my best in the funding mechanism, which is very important for us. How do we fund this program? So briefly is that there's a, let me look at the strategy they have for funding, which I'll love to share with you. So the funding must come from, first of all, the national and regional funding. So member states, the regional bodies must fund the strategy. Then you know how now funding like domestic resources should be mobilized for science, technology, research, and innovation. External technical and financial support should also help in the domestic efforts funding basis. And lastly, you look at the funding model. This is how now it has been going. So Africa has a potential to finance its strategy development program towards 1% GDP of all the countries. So only if they give 1% of the GDP of the national budget, 1%. So for example, the GDP of Algeria is 209. I think it's in terms of US dollars. So 1% is basically what is needed. So this, if all African states donate what they can give, then you have a lot of money that's enough to fund what is needed for this plan. So concerning Africa potential, all those things are what are needed here or what are looked at for this particular moment. So I will not go deeper into the rest, but I believe this is a document that we can still engage on further. And I have shared it for members can have some time at least to look at it. I'll take it back to Brother Kwame. Brother Kwame, please come in. Brother Kwame is not around. Okay, so this is what we have looked at, comrades. And as I addressed the key questions at the beginning, is whether do they lead us towards our liberation, unification, and development of Africa. So the floor is then open for members who can start giving their comments in regards to how this strategy is all about. And then we can look at the next phase on what are the recommendations, what do you think about it, what can be done moving forward. But the floor is open for members to share their thinking in regards to this strategy. I don't know if Brother Kwame is back. Let me check again. Brother Kwame. Oh, he's joining us now. I wanted him to give us also his overview thinking on the strategy. Then now maybe we can go ahead to see what members think about it. But this is a new strategic plan. But yes, any member want to come in as Brother Kwame works on his mic, feel free to come in. Share something you think about, what you want to talk about in regards to this strategy, or anything else you want to comment on. Any member? Hello, can you hear me? Or I've been talking to myself all that long? Yes, Awindok.
Yes, greetings to everybody. Just a small question. How do we see ourselves as CSG fitting in a strategic plan of the AU in order to help them achieve the speedy unification of Africa, or if you like, to be able to wield some direct influence in their strategic planning. I don't know whether I'm audible, whether I'm understood.
Last question is noted. How do we see ourselves as CSG feeding to the program? I'll allow Brother Kwame when he's in to respond to that. Brother Kwame, I know you have been having some network issues, or maybe you've been dropping and coming in. Are you able to share something, Brother Kwame? First of all, can you hear me? Brother Kwame, can you hear me? Brother Kwame. Okay, I'll give Brother Kwame the chance when he's able to try to respond to that question you've raised, Sawindo, but I'll also give my comments after that. Any other comments, concern from the same strategy?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear what Sir Wingdot said. I got disturbed a minute. Could you repeat what the question was? Sorry, beg your pardon.
Sawindo, please repeat it for the benefit of Sister.
As CSG, how do we see ourselves fitting in a strategic plan of the AU towards unification? So maybe to rephrase it a little bit or to add a little bit with a subtext, how do we see ourselves wielding enough influence in their strategic plan? Are we just going to run parallel to their strategic plans and try to think whether the strategic plan will achieve the goal, and if we have anything to add, we will pray on their mercy that they will listen to our opinion? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sister, are you able to respond? Sister Ida?
I don't know that I could explain, but I love the question because there have been other issues to do with people in the diaspora over here trying to get to be AU members. Brother Glenroy might have an opinion, but I think that the groups that we're in should be trying to send people to the AU. Often there's not enough people in groups, but I do think that it should be one of our objectives to get people to the AU, because the AU seems to be, I call them toothless, but they seem to be out there, above most Africans. At least that's what I think. They seem to operate in a sphere of their own and try to imitate the UN. But I don't think they're doing enough for Africans, and therefore I think it's something that people should be aspiring. Even countries should be aspiring to get not just their diplomats into there, but people from grassroots into the AU. Thank you. Sorry, that's my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Ida. Sawindo, on your question as well, you ask how do we fit in and to help AU in terms of achieving the strategy in terms of Africa unification. Now, if you look at the AU, this strategic plan of science, technology, and innovation is focused on all these priority areas. There are 6 priority areas, 6 or 7 of them. If you look at us in the Pan-African space, we might fit basically on their 5th priority area, which is living together, building the society. So they're looking at the citizenship, which I think will be in an interest for us as Pan-Africans. In terms of unification, I think what you said, if we have to unify as Africans, then common citizenship for Africa is very important for us as a first gesture towards the unification of us as Africans. And therefore, how do we come up with either digital citizenship documents, or how do we help in that? I don't know whether they have that, because we have to bypass the so-called national or state citizenships. I'm a citizen of Nigeria, I'm a citizen of Kenya. No. If you have to achieve the unification of Africa, then you need to have a common citizenship. People now have been pushing for common passport, but I'm pushing beyond passport to common identity. So if you have a document in your country that identify you, you call it national identification card, that identify you as a Nigerian or a Namibian, then we need to use this technology, or we need to propose to the African Union that it's a high time, and I know they have been working on this, to have a common citizenship document. Whether they can integrate the existing citizenship IDs, so whether you will retain your same ID, but it has to start with the Africa before it goes to Ghana, so it's AG, which means it's an African ID, then there's no problem. But you need to have that level. Again, they are talking of Pan-Africanism and regional integration. These are still areas where we can come in, especially on Pan-Africanism as well. How do we build an African society that is based on Pan-Africanism as progressive Pan-Africans? And that means that we will have to fight and propose radical measures that goes to their strategy priority number 6, especially the parts to which says exploitation and management of our resources. So if we have to push strong, then we have to ensure that our resources in the continent from various states must only be used by Africans for the benefit of Africans. But I don't know what you think. Sawindok, welcome. I'm trying to just share my thinking as well. Yes, Sawindok, I will allow Brother Kwame to come in and move us forward from here when he's ready.
Yes, I'm asking from the backdrop of fast tracking the unification of Africa. Having said that, what is the purpose of this AU strategic plan? Is it not to fast track unification? Just a loose question. However, what is the timeline of AU itself by which it would have wanted to reach complete unification of Africa? And in that same breath, does CSG also have a timeline by which Africa should be seen to have united, or to have been not united, to have reached unification?
Thank you. Your good questions. The African Union Agenda 2063, which you have discussed some times back, look forward to unite Africa by 2063. That's what they have. For this strategy, this science, technology, and innovation strategy, its only mandates are only these priority areas, 6 priority areas. It is here to ensure that it eradicates hunger, food, and nutrition. It is here to ensure that it controls disease and ensure well-being, to promote communication, to protect our space, to live together, and to create wealth. That is only the purpose of this strategy. AU has so many strategies, including the agricultural strategy. There are so many other strategies, but this strategy is basically focused on only these areas. In regards to CSG having a timeline for that, I don't think we've sat down to come up with what is our timeline for Africa unification. But again, it's not even the question for whether the CSG think about this. It should be brought into a broader Pan-African community. Do the broader Pan-Africans as a whole have agreed on what timeline do they want to see Africa united, apart from what the AU has put in place? So it's a question to all of us again. As Pan-Africans and Pan-African movement, do we have our own timeline? And if you have our own timeline for Africa to unite, how do you penetrate? Bearing in mind that we have to use either AU or the current states to push for that. Because even if you have to push for common citizenship, it must be ratified by the people of those states. So how do you go about that? So those are things I'm just thinking about. But Brother Kwame, when you are ready to speak, please feel free to come in. Sir, Elder Glenroy? Elder Glenroy?
Yes, greetings. I'm just really want to ask is, in your opinion, setting an agenda for 2063, I think it is, without any benchmark or, for me, apparently strategy of testing how that is progressing. In other words, I think a question asked earlier on about what are the timetables for segment of this unification? Because there's some things that are, shall we say, easy win. We keep talking about an African travel or even borderless travel within region, and how that would.
Elder Glenn, we are losing you. Elder Glenn?
Right to return. So it just seems to be a case of everything being thrown into. Um, we will achieve this in 2063 without apparently any checks and balances on the way towards 2063. And indeed, what's the plan if unification doesn't occur in 2063? What's the plan B? Thank you.
Brother Kwame, are you around? I'd like to say that I think your question echoes back to the AU Agenda 2063, which, of course, we are not looking at in this particular document at this particular stage, but we have looked at the Agenda AU 2063 in our previous reviews as well. And I think the global Pan-African community accept that 2063 is too long. And there are not even evidence of proper measures that are showing that actually we are moving to 2063 to attain anything. Because you could have expected probably, and maybe they are...
Sorry, can I interrupt? Yes. Whilst I understand the people who said that it's too long, I'm not questioning that. I agree with that. That's too long. But my question is there some sort of test, whether we get to 2023 or not? Is within the plan? I'm sorry I joined a little bit late. Perhaps you did explain the 6 stages. But within that, is there something that says 2060 we will expect this, 2050 we will expect this, and so on and so forth? I've not interrogated the document to that degree, and I'm hoping that you are going to, your response to me is going to be, and I'm sorry if I'm bringing something up that we discussed before, but I'm just asking if there is some kind of benchmark. If there isn't, then fair enough. We should be discussing that or putting that forward. That's
okay.
Really my question. Yeah, not whether it's a long time. I agree totally with that. But somebody say we are where we are.
Okay, for this strategic plan, it was to run between 2014 to 2024, which is a 10-year plan. Okay. So the phase is what I've explained here, how the phases were to take place, up to where it is. So we are just actually looking at it, whether have they attained what they looked for. So this was for 10-year plan. It was not up to 2063. This was for 10-year plan. And the issues were the implementation. If you look at the second phase, they were looking at the implementation of first series of the programs. Of course, they've been coming up with programs. If you look at the second phase of their strategy, which was between 2015 to 2017, was development and implementation of the first flagship programs. And the key areas here, 3-year flagship program will be implemented. So they're just explaining this, including Center of Excellence, the Pan-African universities working together. The only thing that I think is lacking all along, and the questions that you're putting forward to us as Pan-Africans, is why are no proper implementation of AU so-called strategies, whatever you mention them? Because I've mentioned even before, there was a plan to silence the guns by 2020. Up to date, there's nothing that's going on excellence in the gun. It's guns all over the continent. So somebody even make a comment before I came in is that are these just plans to waste our time or strategies just to hoodwink us? And what radical need to be done? So I agree with you, Elder Glenn, but again, in regards to their science and technology, this is what they are thinking to do in order or in line with science, technology, and innovation for Africa. In regards to the unification of Africa, which is in Agenda 2063, I don't know what report is all about that, whether they have done the implementation, the trial phases. But of course, you see, they're talking of economic unification, because when you talk of the unification, it's not only political. There's economic unification, like now the program that's going on, which you call the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement, which is in the phase of implementation as an element of economic unification on trade unification. We haven't seen something in regards to the monetary unification, the single currency. I don't know anything about that from the AU. We haven't heard so much about the common citizenship the document. We haven't heard about even the moving of so-called regional states into even a political unit, because we could have expected, if you're moving probably to 2063 with a one continental government, for example, you could have started by either merging the West African into one regional government. So all West Africa, maybe to have a one president. As you try to escalate that, so you see what is going on. Okay, in the next 10 years, let's ensure that all West Africa has one president, the one country or one regional government. See how it works out as you scale it to the continental scale. So we haven't got actual reports from this, and probably we can request as Pan-African organizations on the AU to give us a proper report or updates on how are they performing, or how far are they, or what timelines and plan do they have to ensure that they attain the unification of Africa by that 2063. Something that still the Pan-African movements or as CSG or Pan-Africans can actually seek that knowledge from, or that information from AU. And I think it's something that we, the progressive, must do. Because we cannot wait until 2063 is when you say, okay, now you failed, so what do we do? I think it's incumbent on us at this particular moment to question and seek reports from AU, either write to them and for them to write to us to explain to us that this is the achievement we've had. If they have a document, let them point us to that document so that we can see what they're doing. But just sitting without a test of the unification and wait for 2063, then you say, okay, now we have not attained this. Because even this document we are sharing here, I'm very sure whatever was put in strategy has never been attained. They will tell you resources and many other things, but there's a lot to speak of beyond that. But yes, I agree we need to act. And one of the action we can take from here is to request and seek a report from AU on what are they doing in regards to that. And probably even for this document, we can take an action to seek a report from AU to provide us their implementation report, the success of the strategy, the report of the strategy, because reports have a strategy, strategies have a report, what we call monitoring and evaluation report. So after you've done the 10-year strategy, what is the feedback do you have for us? What are the main challenges you faced? What are your achievements? What were whatever recommendations? Those are very important. Let me go back to Sawindok. Brother Kwame, just let me know when you are free so that you can speak. Sawindok, would you come in, please? Then I'll go to other members in the floor.
Yes, please. I don't see any member who has raised a hand, but 2063 is very, very, very pessimistic and hypocritical, if you like. The AU is captured by those who do not want unification. And 2063 is to make sure that the current crop of leaders have come to the end of their lives and they wouldn't care what would happen thereafter. So it's just a ploy to give them enough time to stay in office for so long as they want. So it is our time to declare terms because we want the unification as in yesterday already. We can't wait for them. Having said that, you said two things. All of us as Pan-Africanists must come up and set timelines. In the absence of timelines, we can take the lead and dictate the terms for the other Pan-Africans to follow, to agree, or to amend. And we cannot request reports from AU and they would willingly give them to us because AU is not our organization. We do not have any influence in them. If we were an ex officio member of the organization, we would have had that power to request. We will request and then they will just keep quiet as they have always been doing. What then? What is the next contingency plan in our arsenal? Zero. I think we are just circling. We've been circling. We've been going around and round and round without really getting an exit route towards having an influence in the AU. And for as long as we do not have any, as we cannot wield any influence on the AU, they will keep on prolonging the process because it is in their utmost best interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Elder Glenn.
Yes, thank you. I think what I like about what Comrade is saying, well, what I want to add to what Comrade has just said is that there is another level of unification that we don't seem to talk about. Of course, there is paramount expectation among government unification because there will be the people who will ultimately endorse whatever it is that we seek to achieve. But there need to be cross-border people unification. I'm not worked it out in my head what that means exactly, but when we talk about, for example, Pan-Africanist organization or Pan-Africanist political parties, if and I mean non-governmental, but parties that are not in government, if there are parties across borders and boundaries who are Pan-Africanists, and we need to define that. We need to say what are the qualification that will say to us this is a genuinely Pan-Africanist political party. If we can have those on the continent and in the diaspora, I've been part of this type of discussion before, and it hasn't gone very well. But if we think of the PAC in South Africa, what are the other Pan-Africanist organizations that are actually standing to make political changes? And if there were a PAC in Kenya, a PAC in Tanzania, to work in solidarity with the PAC in South Africa, we would have a form of unification. Now, obviously, how the authority would respond to that is questionable. But I agree with the comrade who spoke just now. 2063 is something to throw in the long grass, and we're all wondering, what's going to go on. I appreciate his analogy of by the time that comes around, all of those people will have died and gone. So will we, unfortunately. So is it intended that next generation won't even acknowledge what it's about to be able to do anything about it? But I think it's a correct analogy, that kind of timetable. The other thing I wanted to say is, do we have any study about how other formation, I mean, most people think of the European Union, how long that took, because I don't think it took that long, but others were joining. I lived in the UK for a long time, and I know all the games that were played before they became properly involved in the European Union, and how they obviously sabotaged it and got out. My first 18-year-old opportunity to vote was the referendum that Ted Heath government, former PM of the UK, carried out. So I think, if 2063 is to be looked at as whether it's feasible or not, I think comparison or study of other type of coalition is probably worth looking at. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Elder Glenn, for the points you've raised. Both you and Brother Sawindog is actually touching on the practical areas. Of course, I'm afraid that we are, of course, moving the conversation to the political aspect. And of course, this will always come in. Because anytime we are talking about things with the AU, people look at it in that direction. But I think I'll request us that we permit these particular sessions to look at this science, technology, and innovation for Africa. How can it be useful? How can we Africans use science and technology for our unification? And whether this strategy is very important for us to move forward as a people. Of course, we will have the political discussion, and I think even next Saturday we are still having a topic revolving the political angle. But let's look at the space of technology and science. It's moving on. Our science is compulsory in some of the African schools. That's why we're having
Brother
this.
Pigeon,
Yes.
my apologies. Before we move on, can I make one last comment, please?
Only if it is in line with this science, technology, and innovation.
Still on the politics.
No, I'm afraid
Okay.
we will have to discuss politics on another political level. I fully endorse what you have said, Sir Windhoek, in terms of us having a timeline as Pan-Africans. Because yes, you are saying AU has failed, but what have we done as Pan-Africans? What have we done as Pan-African movements and organizations? Have we also failed?
See, by now, I would have made my comment already.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the group. You see, because when we were attaining independence, we were creating completely new states. I repeat this one. When we were attaining independence, we were creating completely new states from the colonizers to independent states. The same with the unification of Africa. Technically, we are creating a new state, one state. But by the time we were creating our own individual states, did we need to have policies in place first before we could attain independence? No. Now we are discussing policies. Will the policies help us attain the unification? Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Windhoek. I might not be ready to comment on that as well. Of course, it's a question that we need to ask ourselves, and I think it might fit in the next platform we have. But I believe policies play a critical role in anything. Laws, constitutions, rules, programs are products of policies. And policies that says that then goes to laws that say that this is a territory called Kenya. You must come in with a document called passport. You must come with what you call visa, and you must not cross over. Those are actually policies that then lead to what we are. I'll also say that, of course, we never created these so-called states. These so-called states were created by the whites when they came and found us during the Berlin Conference. What wrong we did is to inherit those states rather than going back to what we were before they came. So they came in and found us of who we were, created states where they found us, left us, and we did not dismantle what they created. We decided to carry forward what they stated so that we own them to be now our creation. That is one of the biggest mistakes we did as Pan-Africans. Because if somebody comes in your house, then find you where you're sleeping, then build a new house, then walks away, and then instead of you going back to your house once the person is gone, you decide now to enjoy the new house that the person built, and you think that you are now free again. You are still in his house. So actually the states where we are, so-called Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, whatever, is the white man house that they created. We were not of that, but you have inherited them and continue to move forward with them. And that's the biggest mistake we did in the beginning. But how to track ourselves back to that takes so many things, because we are looking at even the development of Africa. The purpose of the unification of Africa is for the development of Africa. So things with science, technology, innovation is part of the contributors to the development of Africa. Technology is part of the contributors to the unification of Africa. Today we are discussing, we are unified, we are talking. We can be able to communicate as persons, as Brother Glenn was saying. How about the unification of us as Africans? We are unified here. We are discussing through technology. But who's the technology? Their technology, not our technology. We know of a group called the Ancient Africans that are trying actually to come our ancient society, coming up with our technology. We know the AI space is now going on, but remember the people are trained in AI are young boys and men from Nigeria, from Kenya. But they're working for who? To whose benefit? To their benefit, not to our benefit. When you talk of sciences, how do we inculcate our so-called traditional and indigenous knowledge in the so-called sciences? They call our practices witchcraft. They call them traditional. They call them the herbal. They don't want to accept our medicine, the mainstream system. The Pan-African Parliament then put a law that recognizes our herbal medicine to be used as a traditional, as a medical system in the mainstream. But they are calling it alternative. Why they should not be alternative? So these are the issues that we must discuss as well in terms of our development. Because what is the purpose of unification if it's not for our development? So those are the conversation we must engage, as I really truly accept. But let's give it a space. Let us prioritize and at this particular moment look at this strategy that AU is saying for science, technology, and the rest. Does it speak to our demand? How do we influence it? How do we shape it to ensure that it's not an elite's game? It's not about propelling the Western ideology forward. Brother Kwame, before I call Brother Kwame, please let me know if you are ready to speak. I'll go to sisters in the room. Sister Ida is here, Sister Shaza is here, Sister Chisomo is here. Any of you want to say something? Sisters? Yeah, sister. Okay, Sister Chisomo, anything you want to talk about in regards to this strategy?
Um, um, just to comment on the 1963, I've never understood why, if we can't look after today, we think we can look after 1963. And by 1963, things will have moved on. And it will be a completely different generation with different needs and different wants and different approaches. And to think that we can prepare and sort for them today, that one is beyond my imagination. And because we're struggling today. So does it mean the people 60 years before were planning for today? Did they fail? Did they not do it? Why are we in the mess that we are today? And then we think we can correct stuff for 1963. And also in terms of, and also looking at innovation and technology and all that, it's not happening in Africa. It might be happening in a few countries, maybe Kenya, South Africa, and places like that. But the majority have no access to it. And we're talking about 1963? Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Sister Chisoma. I think you're pointing at a very important element as well. How much is our country's budget set aside for research, for technological spaces? Because the world is moving forward. The world is innovating so many things, but they're getting their mineral from where? From Africa. What is Africa doing in terms of technology? Because the global technological space is depending on the resources from the continent. They're building their plane, they're building their rockets, they're building their nuclear, their bombs and the rest. They're building their super speed trains and the rest. But where do they get the resources? From Africa.
Can I just quickly come back again?
Yes.
For example, in my country, they manufacture these. I don't know if they're manufactured in the country or whether they're coming from somewhere else, but the companies that sell them, they're in the country. They're very tiny little phones. I've always suspected they're from Kenya somewhere because it's a similar system of phones where where you use them for paying stuff. Like in Pesa and whatever, we call it something else in Pamba or whatever. So all the poor people, the people from the village, the people who want a phone, and because they need it to be paying their bills because they don't have access to banks, So they use these phones. If a phone can pay and receive money, why can't it have WhatsApp and Facebook? What's going on? What is going on? What is if it can do something as sophisticated as keeping it as a bank account, paying your bills, paying people or whatever, and you can't have WhatsApp on it? It doesn't take WhatsApp, it doesn't take Facebook. Do you see how oppressive these people can be? So a certain society of the people have no access to WhatsApp, have no access to Facebook. They can only use, they can't even put credit on it to send a message. To send a message, but it can pay, it can receive money, but when it comes to putting money to make a call or to just send a message, it's extremely impossible. You can't even be bothered doing it.
No, it's very.
So, and then you talk about 1963?
No, not 1963, 2063 actually. The African Union agenda is 2063. But it's very important what you're saying. But even if they then download the WhatsApp, the Facebook, the Twitter, is whose Twitter, is whose Facebook, is whose WhatsApp. At the end of the day in Kenya, those phones are called Mulika Mwizi, which basically says actually point at a thief. So put a light at a thief at night when you put on your, or you turn on your torch, then you actually bring the thief at light. So you just cast a light at the thief. That's what we call those phones in Kenya, Mulika Mwizi. They're only used to point at the thieves and something like that.
So you have them as well?
Yeah, they are all over.
No WhatsApp?
Yeah, they have no WhatsApp.
Strange.
Yeah, Sister Ida, let's go to Sister Ida. I'll come back to you, Sawindok. Let me get to Sister Ida first. Sister Ida?
Chisomo quickly.
Sister Ida. Okay. Sister Shaza? Do you have anything to say in regards? I know some of you came in when you are already done with the presentation of the strategic plan for AU, which is the Science, Technology and Innovation plan that you are trying to look at today. I took members through the whole document just briefly. And yes, I'm looking forward for other reactions, comment on that. Sister Shaza, please go ahead. Sister Shaza, please go ahead.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I don't really have anything much to add other than I agree with everything that's WHK had to say. I have no faith in the African Union whatsoever. They don't serve any purpose. So yeah, I think I don't know, it's an individual thing in terms of unity. I think you have to start with yourself first, working on yourself. I also think that we should all be practicing African spirituality as well. Yeah, there's lots of things. There's no one particular answer, but I agree with what that speaker said, Sir WHK. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, any comment in regards to the continental direction in terms of science, technology, or innovation? What do you see? Is the continent innovating enough? Is the continent coming up with technologies enough to develop the continent? What generally can you say about that? Sister Shaza?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Now, in terms to what is our focus today in terms of science, technology, and innovation, what comment can you say about Africa direction in this? Is it enough innovation going on? How about technologies? Is it time we liberate ourselves from the technologies of the West, and how, basically, in that space, what can you say about Africa?
I'm going to have to let that settle first before I can give you an answer.
Okay, thank you. Sawindok, and then I go to General Nunaki.
Thank you once again. Sister Chisomo, maybe I will answer your question Did
Thank you.
did our forefathers fail from 1963? Yes, indeed, they have failed. And we will fail again if we have. We will fail again if we will have to wait for 2063 for the unification of Africa. Because that is not a practicable timeline. It's not going to give us anything. It's going to put Africa deeper into debt. It's going to impoverish Africa more and more. The sooner we get unified and get single universal policies that will guide all our territories, the better it will be for Africa. And without the brain drain that is happening, we can write a policy, any policy on science, on education, on culture, on anything. With the critical mass that we have, with the brains that we have, we can write any policy within 1 month. We don't need to wait for policies to be written before Africa has been put there by those who know why they put the timeline there.
Sawindok, did we lose you? Okay,
Yes.
Sister Ada, come in.
Oh, Socida. Okay. Sorry, brother Anunnaki. I know it's your turn next, but I was going to say, oh, and I've lost it already. I'll come back after brother Anunnaki. Thank you.
No, anytime you think about it, just come back. Anytime. Yeah, Jaranunaki?
Yes, yes, my lord. Thanks, son of the lake, and to my African family at large. Yeah, ne? Okay. I'm going to leave the political aspect here since you said we must talk on the scientific development. But if you can check at Burkina Faso what's happening, how they are implementing their strategic development in that region of Africa, they've already started building infrastructure. They've nationalized the gold refinery. That's an infrastructure. They've started building an electric vehicle. They are starting up an electric vehicle industry. I think there's about 4 electric vehicles they've already built from Burkina Faso, and they are also planning to build a weapons manufacturer.
Yes.
They've already owned a tomato supply chain. They have tomato farms, which now they are planning to upgrade it in terms of agro business, in agro technology, whereby they'll be using drones to actually monitor the weathers and all the geological factors and stuff. So Burkina Faso is also on that level. And also the tomato manufacturers, they've started there in Burkina Faso, whereby they take the tomato and they make the so-called tomato sauce, for lack of a better term. And they're actually now selling products, exporting products, finished tomato products instead of the raw tomato, which will be sold to France and then sold back to Burkina Faso as a tomato paste. Now Burkina Faso is actually having the capability to plant the tomato and sell it as tomato paste at a higher price. You see, so that is strategic development in 2 years. 2 years. And you and look at Ethiopia. Ethiopia has a weapons manufacture already. Ethiopia is the first African country to own a weapon manufacture company. And now they are actually developing the next phase, which is we might have our own African-born missiles, because Ethiopia now is going to the next level. They are already building guns. Now they are going for missiles, you see. So technology is growing in Africa. It's just that this AU strategic plan is the one that is not meant to work, because everything is on paper. But in 10 years from 2014, there is no infrastructure, you see. We have not even gone to the innovation. There's no infrastructure, you see. So I believe you might as well say the AES is the one that is actually implementing this thing, this STIS we are reading, because of they are already doing it in 2 years. And the last point is that, remember, when Burkina Faso, the AES started 2023, Russia and Burkina Faso, the companies there, they started building a nuclear power station, which will take, I think, 5 years to complete. We're in the second year now. And if they finish that thing, it will be the first nuclear power station, African-owned nuclear power station. So that is technology for you. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you very much for pointing out to that. Now, Sister Ida, come in. Then,
Yes.
we'll go next.
Thank you, Brother Anunnaki, for telling me what I was forgetting. Science and technology. I think the one thing that I was going to mention was the fact that even today, someone was writing about the fact that mobile phones haven't got a good, in some parts, they just can't, you can't get them. And it's something that we should be able to get. And I remember about 20 years ago, someone telling me that because Ghana was on the Meridian line, that if we had things up in space, we should be able to tap into anything all around the world, or certainly in Europe. And I don't see why we don't have things. We had that talk a few weeks back about technology um, and mobile systems, and we haven't heard any more about it. And I just think that that is the one thing that could revolutionize, or one of the big things that could revolutionize all of Africa from the ground upwards. For anybody to be able to um, have phones, get their data, be able to talk all around the world, I think it would make a lot of difference to Africa. Because even us haven't managed to get the Zoom and launch our Zoom platform as CSG. We've made we've gone round the world in our own way. Even it might not be um, astronomically big, and but it's still there, and it's still it grows. And I think that that sort of technology would make a lot of difference to everyone in Africa. That it should be something that most Africans could tap into and make a difference in their lives. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, comrades. Those who have the Anunnaki listed the development going on in Burkina Faso. I am aware Uganda is also doing the manufacturing of cars. I'm aware, I think it's Ghana. The issue is whether they are owned by those countries or Africans, or whether they are owned by whites who are putting manufacturing plants here. I'm aware of South Africa, I don't know, was doing something to do with most of the choppers in Kenya here that almost crash every day. Choppers that crash to kill some of the former commander-in-chief was said to be coming from South Africa. I'm aware that the continent is trying to develop in a way. Others are trying to move the speed train and the rest. But is it enough? The issue is it enough, and how can we scale this? And I think the key issues still go back to the individual so-called countries. Are they really putting enough money to advance science, technology, and innovation within the continent? Or they're still going to request for Google to come and help them develop what, request for Amazon to come and do what for them? The potential possibility, for example, today, the whole Africa is in the transport sector. But look at the Uber, look at I don't know call what, look at Bolt and the rest. Who are they? They're not Africans. So we have a population, we have a demand, but we are not innovating to feed our demand. Rather than the rest of the world is coming to take advantage and milk money from us because they're putting their things where we are and we're using them and celebrating, forgetting to make our own. Look, for example, M-Pesa, a brilliant idea from the continent. but taken tap by Vodafone and moving forward. But it's been revolutionizing the world. There are many people who have innovated so many things as solutions to the continent. Why are we as Pan-African not taking now clear space to start promoting them, start using them? Every time we have a boycott, we say boycott Coca-Cola, boycott whatever. I think it's high time we also Pan-Africans start embracing the technologies that have already been developed, that have already been put in place by our fellow young and old Pan-Africans, so that we start giving the market. It's one thing to innovate, it's another thing to use it. And most of the time, we don't use our product. We don't embrace our product. We don't market our product enough. We don't speak enough of what we are doing. And people then think that we do nothing. So that's also a challenge to us. We need to talk about it as well. Elder Glenn, please come in. We are having 20 minutes to go. So Elder Glenn, and then I'll go to Sister Chisomo briefly, and then I'll go to members who are here with us, like Luang, who have joined us, and Luang, and Barry, and then Brother Kwame. So Elder Glenn, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the reason I think that the mobile phone took off at such a rate in the UK was a lack of availability of landline. Even though, you know, it's a Western country, it was one of the most appalling service in the sense of getting a landline. You would have to wait a long time for it. And now I think very few people have landline. All they have is mobile phone. And one of the things I've noticed here in Zanzibar is everyone has a mobile phone. So this technology, as people have said, is very much here. And there is no way, I think, out of it that we can't backtrack on it or say, you know, let's not have it because of its original, not origin not being here, even though so much of the components and technology, as you know, is stolen from the Congo. But the thing that I wanted to raise as far as science and technology is concerned is to ask, do people know what are the response to the demand of technological exchange, or I can't remember the exact word that was used in the CARICOM plan, but it's a common knowledge that the enslavers, once they had allegedly ended their colonization, and we know that's not what it was, it's just merely a transfer of the representative of the exploiter, was that they ensured that there were no technology or no innovation or no factories or industries in the Caribbean, for example, and I suspect in every other region of their colonization. It was said specifically by the colonizers that not one nail should be made in the Caribbean. In other words, if you wanted to import a nail to put two pieces of wood together, you have to get it from Europe. So I just wondered if
Elder Glenn? Elder Glenn?
Sorry, comrades, I got cut off. I don't know if people can still hear me. Can you?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You can. Yeah, let me just finish before you go.
Oh dear, they don't want you to talk.
What's going on? Elder Glenn is out. Okay, Sister Chisomo?
Yeah, no, no, I'm trying to remember what I wanted to say.
In other words, when we know they're stealing our mineral, can we demand that there is a technological exchange? I'm going to leave it there, comrade, because my signal seems to be getting in and out. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Elder. Sister Chisomo?
Yeah, I don't know if I heard, was it Sir Windog saying I don't know who said we should contact Africa Union about certain things. And I think this phone thing should be questioned. Why are these people allowed to make phones that don't take the basic thing as the as WhatsApp? What do they expect these people to do? Not communicate with anybody? Just use it for them as a bank and nothing else? These are the poorest people that are hard to reach and whatnot. If we didn't have our phones, imagine not having your phone for even a day to communicate with anybody. If we didn't have WhatsApp, would we be holding these meetings, all these WhatsApp groups and connecting throughout the world? Why are they excluded from this whole system? Why are they being excluded? And why should they be buying phone units when WhatsApp is it's almost free? But in my country, you have to buy it, you have to subscribe. But that's not a problem. But they can't even subscribe if they wanted to, you see. So I've always wondered why these companies are not being questioned, or is it by design that they keep things that way so people don't mobilize themselves and then take off, against the government? I don't know what the idea behind it is. And secondly, we have so many innovators. For example, in my country, time and again, we've had one that invented electricity, another one invented Wi-Fi, another one invented little phone, another one. And when these people invent these things, they hunt them down, beat them up, and they have to stop. What is going on? Because if they can't do it, and young kids are coming up with something different, then they hunt them down. This little boy was beaten up, nearly broke his arm, but the university, our technology university, then took him on to kind of protect him, or I don't know, maybe to steal his innovation or whatever. But anyway, they are working with him. But still, it's not expanded to the masses or made use of anything. Remember that Chakwamba guy who did electricity for us? He's out of the country now. The white people are the ones working with him elsewhere in Europe. We've got that another Malawian in Zimbabwe who invented the electric car. No, not electric car. It doesn't use fuel. It doesn't use electricity. It uses air or something, and a motorbike and a whatever. They came all the way from the West. Oh, let's go and see him. Let's go and see him. The next thing, he was poisoned. I was just watching one video today that said where is he? He's just disappeared. So it's those kind of things. So this phone thing, it's also deliberate, and the countries are colluding to keep it that way, oppress the people so they don't participate in this digital world or the economy. That's my comment.
Yeah, thank you. Sister Chisomo, you must also be conscious that those who innovate whatever they innovate phones and sell, they always look at demand and the ability to buy, the purchase power. So sometimes you find those phones without those basics of what you are calling are very cheap and affordable. And you look at also the purchase power of people in the community. The smartphones are there, but you see they are being sold expensively. Well, these other phones are...
But I'm talking about that little phone. Put the facility, put the icon there, put the whatever there on that phone. Okay. Add a 500, add a 1,000.
Okay, yeah, I hear you. Thank you. But I think you're raising key issues. Again, why are our innovators coming in and the next day they're in London, they're in New York, they're in which company? Our new doctors come in the next day, they are in Paris. Go look at the best doctors around the world. Go look at maybe the best engineers, innovators. Who are they? Africans. So again, what's the problem? Are they, as Africans, and the Brendan, what Brother Glenn was talking about, an issue taking away our talents and our resources from the continent? Or is our continent, because another thing people will be telling you, no, our country don't pay well, I'm going out where it can pay well. Oh, you see what? I think there's a lot we're also losing in that direction. You have a potential that you're not using properly.
So when you become the president, that must be on your agenda. Ban those phones, ban them.
If you ban them, people will not be make a call, so you will not reach your auntie at
No,
home.
they either put those little facilities on them, or give the contract to somebody else.
I hear you, sister. Thank you. Let me get to, there's a comrade who had not spoken here. I don't know if she's left. Oh, Luang Ngai. Comrade Luang, Sister Ida, I'll come back to you, but permit me to know if Comrade Luang is able to speak. Luang Ton York, I think is from Uganda, Sudan. Are you able to speak, Comrade? Comrade Luang? Okay. If you are not able to speak, or yeah, Comrade Luang, can you speak? Can you share something with us if you are interested? If you're not, I'll go to Sister Ida. Brother Kwame, are you with us? Brother Kwame? Brother Kwame? Okay, Sister Ida.
I was going to raise a point from what Sister Chizoma said about the fact that 1 minute people are educated in African universities and places like that, and then the next minute they're in somewhere in the West. And I know I asked on the SIS Sunday International meeting last Sunday, I was asking if Namibia, who's about to give free education, free university education, whether they have after education, they have to give a year's service or whatever. I know in Ghana they have to. And I think that quite often people learn and then just like Sister Chizoma says, they're out of the country. And I think that if it's free education, they should do a minimum of so many years before they can leave government service. So, I mean, if someone's going to be taught something, especially science and technology, why should they then learn it for free and then get poached by those countries who haven't put a penny into their education? I think it's something that we should be looking, well, not we, but it's something that Africans should be asking and pointing a finger at and saying, why are we losing our best graduates? Why are we losing our best nurses and doctors and everybody else?
Can I respond to that one when you finish?
Especially Namibia, who are now about to, but they don't have that at the moment. So thank you.
Right. In the case of Malawi, first of all, we don't have service. I don't even know what it is. I hear about it. I don't know what it is because we don't have it. Secondly, these people who are inventing these things, none of them learned it from school. It's just them playing at home with things and coming up with whatever they come up with.
True.
So there's no input from school or government or from anybody. It's just that individual coming up with all these things that they are coming up with, and then they hunt them down. That's why they hunt them down, because they're wondering what's happening there. Are they tapping into our system? What are they doing? And they don't promote them, they don't encourage them. So people are even scared to invent things. Probably now people are inventing things and not saying anything about it. So it's got nothing to do with the government, nothing to do with the education system in Malawi is so restrictive, very oppressive. Again, that's a story for another day. But so coming here, it's because somebody out here has heard about you. So they go into the country, they see nothing is happening, the government or nothing is happening in your country. So they take you to come and work with you out here. That's what happened to Nkwamba, the one with the wind. What is it? Harness the wind or whatever. Now we've got this internet guy. Now we've got all these people. White people will just go in, take them and bring them here. I suppose to find out how they do it, and then they take the idea and run away with it.
Okay.
Yes, excuse me, may I come in? Because that is very true, but they're even doing it even worse to our university graduates. So thank you.
Okay.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, thank you. We are almost coming to an end of our session today. But I think there are a few things that are coming out of this conversation. That one is the people don't believe on these strategies by AU and whether they are effective or implemented, and the dissatisfaction of their implementation rate is coming out very clearly. Out of this, of course, the key issue that most of Pan-Africans feel that the AU should focus on the unification of Africa soonest or as soon as possible. And probably suggestions has also been thrown whether we can seek to reach out to AU to give us reports on some of these so-called strategies that they, because if you see they call experts sit down and do what? They have spent money, a lot of money, to sit people in the rooms to come up with what they call a strategy. Then if that is not implemented, then what is the need to do a strategy if you don't implement the strategy? So those are also concerns coming out. Another very important thing that's coming out towards our end of this conversation is that the Africans are innovating. The technologies that are coming from the continent. Example of what is possible with what's done in the Sahel is a clear evidence that we can do it. And only if we get probably focused leaders and leaders who can put priority towards our development in terms of our technology and our science. And again, it's about not that we don't have innovators, not that we don't have tech service, but they tend to be taken away from the continent. Either you call it brain drain, either they go because they want more money out, or because the next countries out there want to poach them. Is a key issues, and I think then we need to come up with also proposal on how do we cap that. Of course, you know, people have their various issues or reasons why they go out to look for a job or why they innovate things. Some innovate very critical ideas, but maybe to sell it. So when they get the highest bidder, they walk away. But I think we need to ensure that we protect our ideas. We use our innovations to help improve our societies. And I know, like, for example, during COVID in Kenya here, some young men came up with a plan to, what do you call this thing in the hospitals? These things for breathing. I don't know, I forget about them. During those times of COVID, they actually built it through some scrap metals, but the government did not embrace it. They were never given tender to supply to hospitals. While our hospitals are lacking those facilities on those equipment, the government is not interested to give these people the permission to do that. So the blame is two-way. It's both also the government's ability to actually commit, to help and promote, but the government will leave the innovation of our young people or of our people and go embrace something to be imported from abroad, just either for them to make money or for tenders or for shortcuts or for deals. So those are key things that are coming out from this conversation. And I think the general view of this Stisa document is that it may just be another document to take us along chase again, but we need to go deep to the what is our key objective, what is our priorities. And I think another question that has been raised in political angle that was not related to this is if the African Union unification timelines are very far, what are we giving ourselves as Pan-Africans? What is our timeline to unify the continent? Of course, we know those proposals have to be ratified by various unions, but then the question is, what is our proposals, our timeline? What do we think, or when do we think that we must unite as Africa? So, unless there's something I've forgotten, please I'll give a minute for other member to raise something that maybe was discussed and is not covered in this my summary. Anybody?
Just a question.
Yes.
You see, it's not, I keep saying 1963, 2063 business. What's the origin of it? Is it not from them? Was it our idea?
Yeah, it was a meeting that was decided in 2010. when they came up with agenda, Africa Union Agenda 2063, of course. But you see, even in the continent, there's a capture of the elite capture. So the African elites can also sit down and set agenda, you see?
Yeah, set agenda with their funders and then come to us to discuss with our head of states.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The African elites can also sit down to set an agenda, and even our head of states are also not in touch with the ground or the reality. They are also maybe they are masters. They are the neo-colonial agents. So, and you look again, they are saying even the AU funding, half of it is from the West. So the independence of AU is an issue. Some are saying we should disband AU, we should forget about it. So all these conversations are within the Pan-African scope. But how do we move forward from conversations towards actually converging to what we want? And I think the responsibility is still with us Pan-Africans and the Pan-African movement to decide that out of the analysis we've done, out of the wrong things going on, what do we think we can do to move forward to where we want to move? Because they maybe don't want us to move there, but we want to move there.
The problem is their membership is head of states and CSOs and all these people. So us as individuals or as the people, we have no direct relationship with them to then address these things direct without having to go through certain channels. So it's all very well strategized to the extent that, oh, let's talk about 2063 and not talk about now. Oh, go through your heads of states or whatever, go through CSOs, go through whatever, and nothing happens.
Okay, so I think our conversations never end, but we'll do a review of this and maybe come up with a same position paper on what we've thought about their program, the feeling of the members here. Then we can be able to circulate with the members for input as well. But we'll do something as a summary of what we've discussed today, and maybe come up with a proper document, just a small document that will put the recommendation we have decided on, so that we can pick it more forward. Because sometimes our conversation must lead towards some recommendation. The recommendation must lead towards us taking some actions. We don't have just conversation for conversation's sake, but sometimes to then come up with some ways forward. In fact, our key goal is always what must be done. So we'll do some small compiling of this, what members are thinking about this document, then share around, we see how we can then take it forward. But yes, we need to properly also ask what is being done in regards to this strategy that is being put forth. Without much ado, Sister Ida, are you able maybe to close this for us now that Brother Kwame seems not to be able to speak?
Well, let me thank everybody who's managed to make it and managed to stay till the end, because it's been interesting, and I hope this isn't the end of the conversation, but as you say, we need to do something to move forward, and there is a lot that we could do, though maybe not at this moment. So thank you all for all who've been here. And let me say good night to you.
Yeah, thank you all. And just to put another question, thank you, Sister Ida. We are having a conversation on Pan-African unity, I think, next week. But we are still requesting for sisters to come forth, because we are having Africa Liberation Day program coming in. We need more speakers, our sisters, to step forward. In fact, we want to dedicate it to the sisters so much, to lead the conversation on the Africa liberation. So please, I'll send again another request for members who are interested to be speakers to come forth. Please help me once you get that request. Help me to circulate it so that you can see how we can have people coming in. We need to start planning that in advance. So once again, thank you very much, and let's meet again either on Thursday for our CSG. Tomorrow we do some small reading. Tuesday for our Swahili. On next Saturday for also the Pan-African Unification conversation. May you have a lovely evening to you all. Thank you.